line between the United States, China, and Russia was so large with no concrete proposal that its effectiveness was in question. Article 6 of the NPT recognizes the possession of nuclear weapons by the 5 nuclear powers while imposing the obligation to conduct negotiations on nuclear disarmament in good faith. But the United States, China, and Russia have completely ignored these provisions and have been working hard to modernize their nuclear weapons. It can be said that the entry into force of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, or TPNW, comes from the distrust of non-nuclear armed states in the 5 major powers that have been swaying the NPT regime and the crisis of the survival of humanity on Earth. However, on February 24th, shortly after the statement was announced, Russian President Vladimir Putin suddenly launched a military invasion of neighboring Ukraine. It is presumed that Russia has been wary of Ukraine, which is approaching Europe and the United States, but it is unacceptable to invade and intimidate other countries by force. The United Nations immediately proposed a quick withdrawal and a sanctions resolution against Russia's illegal acts, but could not implement it due to opposition from China, a permanent member of the Security Council, exposing the UN's incompetence. In Ukraine, buildings such as hospitals and houses are targeted indiscriminately every day, and many residents are seriously injured or killed. President Vladimir Putin has also targeted nuclear facilities, which is prohibited by the international law, and has publicly threatened to use nuclear and chemical weapons. Many people are fleeing to other countries as refugees. What they see reported on TV every day overlaps with my childhood memories of 77 years ago. On that day, all mornings in Nagasaki were lifted in the morning, and for the first time in a long time, the children run out of the bomb shelters and bathe in the sun with their bodies. I was at the age of 5 then, and was talking with my neighbor's child with a water tank on our backs. We heard the sound of an airplane coming from a distance. We thought it was a Japanese plane. I remember up to that point. When my memory returned from the fainting, I was about 10 meters away from where I was. Luckily, I was not injured, but when I looked toward my house, there was a lot of dust and a B-29 circling in the sky. Soon, a procession of ghosts, as my grandmother referred to them, passed by. We did not know whether they are men or women, and they had the skin hanging from their hands and backs. Evacuation orders were issued, and we moved to an air raid shelter on high ground. But I will never forget the sight of the bombing city of Nagasaki that night. On August 15th, hearing news that we had lost the war, we returned home where my grandmother's bones were waiting for us in a small bucket. On July 7th, 2017, we rejoiced in the adoption of the TPNW, believing that we could eliminate nuclear weapons from the face of the earth. 1 year, on August 9th, on behalf of the organizations of atomic bomb survivors in Nagasaki, I I handed over a letter of request directly to Prime Minister Abe, who did not support the TPNW. I asked him, which country are you the Prime Minister of? The government claims that Japan's security is under the US-Japan Security Treaty. While taking advantage of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, conservative political leaders, including ruling party, have been calling for nuclear sharing with the United States and strengthening defense capabilities. On June 21st to 23rd, 2022, at the first meeting of state parties to the TPNW held in Vienna, states that have already signed the treaty, NATO countries such as Germany, the Netherlands, and Norway, and the people participated. From Japan, mayors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as well as Hibakusha, second generation Hibakusha, youth, and many others participated, but there was no sign of the Japanese government. Where is the so-called bridging that Japan has been calling for? It is pathetic that Japan does not even offer its experience and knowledge as the so-called only A-bomb country when it is expected to do so. The government has announced that it will include Prime Minister Kishida in the next NPT meeting. But this is only an excuse for not participating in the meetings of state parties to the TPNW. It is an obvious fact that the NPT is not working. There are still 13,000 nuclear weapons on Earth, and the nuclear-armed states are aiming to use their nuclear weapons. Taking lessons learned from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, nuclear-armed states must abandon their sense of superiority and consider the issue seriously. Otherwise, this planet will be destroyed. I look forward to fruitful discussions at the NPT Review Conference.
As Mr. Shuichi Kido of the Japanese Confederation of A and H Bomb mentioned in his speech at the first meeting of states parties to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the TPNW, in Vienna this year, nuclear weapons are weapons of inhumanity and absolute evil. In order to preserve the true history and accountability of attacking Japan with the worst weapons of mass destruction, we, the undersigned, representing a coalition of concerned peace organizations and people of the United States, wish to express our sincere regrets and apology for the deaths of those killed by our nation's atomic bombings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, including all nationalities, races, and prisoners of war. A war crime and a crime against humanity. We hope that our government will respect our voices and apologize to all victims and their families. We also extend our deep condolences and apologies to Hibakusha, who have endured great mental and physical hardships for nearly 8 decades as a result of the atomic and horrific bombings, as well as their descendants and fishing crews impacted by nuclear testing in the Pacific, who are struggling with physical and psychological impacts that might have been caused by the atomic bombings or testings. We also send our solidarity to those affected by the ongoing Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant disaster. Advocating for the importance of abolishing nuclear weapons, we will continue to insist that the United States sign and ratify the TPNW. Embark on a multilateral dialogue up with all nuclear-armed states to eliminate all nuclear weapons and take responsibility for this crime against humanity. Our government must realize that the rest of the world is aware that global populations are held hostage by the few countries that possess nuclear weapons, rather than protected by them. At the same time, we continue to demand that the TPNW conference be based firmly on democracy, humanity, and respect for the global commons. And we continue to hope that our country and Japan will be among them as observers, along with other nuclear states at the next opportunities. We believe that we share the same hope with the people of Japan and the rest of the world. Several civil society groups are taking steps to advocate for the elimination of nuclear weapons. For example, the Nuclear Posture Review by the Veterans for Peace, which you can read on the Veterans for Peace website. This past March, Europe's largest nuclear power plant, Zaporizhzhia in Ukraine, caught fire. Although no nuclear reactors were damaged, this incident delivered a decisive lesson. No matter whether people are attacked by nuclear weapons or by conventional weapons targeting nuclear facilities, or whether it's in a nuclear accident, the long-lasting ramifications are the same. As well as to our own government, we call upon the government of Japan to be aware that its reactors are the same as nuclear weapons aimed at its own throat. Conversely, the results are the same if Japan attacks nuclear facilities of neighboring countries or develops nuclear weapons and attacks them, or any nuclear accident happens in neighboring countries. Radioactive particles will ride on westerly winds, flow over, and cover the entirety of Japan in the same way that Japan receives yellow dust every year from the Asian continent. All of the above seriously matters as well for global indigenous communities. Whether nuclear power is used as weapons or as energy, safely or recklessly, their holy lands are ravaged and left with radioactive contaminated soil and water. Their health and environment remain victimized, and their basic human rights have been stripped from the moment uranium was found until now. Thus, the peaceful atom is an oxymoron. Also, any potential harm to the Pacific Ocean, which is a global common, must be avoided for the sake of the safety and well-being of all member nations and islands of the Pacific community, including voiceless creatures in the sea. Dilution is never a solution for pollution. The government of Japan and TEPCO are planning to release into the Pacific Ocean in 2023 so-called treated water. This involves dumping more than 1.28 million metric tons of radioactive wastewater from the damaged Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant after processing it through the Advanced Liquid Processing System, ALPS, which is incapable of eliminating tritium or carbon-14 at all. In addition, according to Dr. Hikaru Amano, former principal researcher at Japan Atomic Energy Research Institute, many radionuclides persist with half-lives of several decades, millennia, and even millions of years, which exceed the 64 radionuclides mentioned by Japan and TEPCO. The ALPS system cannot eliminate them completely. No matter the label or the dilution, water processed by ALPS is still contaminated. Despite the Environmental Protection Agency's underestimated and misleading explanation, tritium actually emits radioactive beta particles, and these harm a DNA molecule in a cell, which can cause mutations, resulting in a serious disease, and persist in the human body for more than 10 years. It is extremely important to emphasize that girls and women disproportionately receive the impact of radiation. Whether the government of Japan or TEPCO meant it or not, releasing radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean is an act of inhumanity and absolute evil. It's the same as attacking the entire Pacific community, especially the female population and future generations with radioactivity. We do not wish for Japan to become an active player harming its neighbors and its own people with nuclear weapons under the name of treated water. Consider then that tritium's half-life is only 12 years, much shorter than many other radionuclides. We strongly urge Japan to keep that so-called treated water ashore until the passing of several half-lives of tritium. Thus, Japan gains several decades of research and development to deal with much less contaminated water. It's still a negative legacy, but it's a more responsible solution than contaminating the entire ocean. We promise to keep raising our voices, to press our own government, to learn from history, to recognize the global damage caused by false hegemony, and not to repeat the same mistakes. No more Hiroshimas! Nagasaki!
No more Nagasaki!
No more war!
No more war!
No more Hiroshima! No more Fukushima!
No more Fukushima!
Never again!
Never again!
Thank you.
The ministers of economy and trade and industry, requesting them to help its plan to dump radioactive wastewater from Fukushima Daiichi into the Pacific Ocean. And Consul Sakuraba agreed that he will share our letters to Prime Minister and relevant agencies in Tokyo. James, would you like to join us in sharing your reports about the meeting with Consul Sakuraba?
We met, several of us, Anthony Donovan over there, Mary-san and myself, we all met with the Japanese consulate on, I believe it was Tuesday. And we offered our sincere apologies and regret for the bombings that we did and the war crimes that we committed against the Japanese people. We also presented them with some artifacts that were donated by someone who had been in Japan, which were very, that the person who had them wanted them to return to Japan, and I think that the representatives were very touched and moved by what we presented them with. They were, for those of you who know what a 1,000-stitch spirit belt is, we presented them with two of those belts, which the Japanese warriors, they wore to war thinking that they would protect them from enemy bullets. And so we had some flags that apparently when the Japanese soldiers would go off to war, that the villagers would gather together and present them with a flag, and the soldier's name was on it, and the people would write sayings on the flag wishing the person well, safe return home. And these were from that period, and we returned those as well as other artifacts. And Anthony Donovan gave a very eloquent and moving presentation. He's here to tell you about it. I present Anthony Donovan.
Thank you, James. It's an honor, and I don't have anything new to say to anyone here, because you all know what I'm going to say, but I was speaking to these two really wonderful young diplomats representing Japan, and I wanted them to know that 40 years ago I was in the same office speaking about nuclear disarmament. And 40 years ago, those wonderful diplomats were well-meaning, well-intentioned, but they explained to me that it's a step-by-step process, that we really need to just keep working on this. We'll get there towards disarmament someday. And I'm saying, that's what I heard 40 years ago. We've had thousands of meetings, thousands of negotiations, and we're still talking about a step-by-step process. The Prime Minister, God bless him, he's from the prefecture of Hiroshima. He knows better, but his suggestion in his speech at the UN is that Russia and the United States get together and dialogue, and that China and the United States get together and dialogue. So I was just suggesting that Japan, you are central. Japan, you are key. You are a vital voice in this nuclear argument. Your people know more than any other people what a nuclear detonation does. Your hibakusha. I said, please, listen to your own people. Listen to the mayor of Nagasaki, the mayor of Hiroshima. Listen to your governor of Hiroshima. Listen to your hibakusha, please. And I told him, I've been I'm a New Yorker. Since in 1976, I can remember hundreds of citizens from Japan coming to our streets here in New York City, begging me and begging all of us to please listen to them and help stop nuclear weapons. And so I asked them, I let them know that these beautiful people from your country, Japan, have been coming here to America to help us work on it. But I said, we need you, Japan, because when I lobby in our Congress, the first thing, when I lobby the Armed Service Committee and the Appropriations Committee, those are the people that give us nuclear weapons. Our appropriations give the money, the Armed Service tell us what we need that money for. So the first thing out of their mouths when I go and lobby them in DC is, well, our allies need us. Our allies want us. And they're talking about you, Japan. They say Japan wants our nuclear umbrella. So I explained to them, and they were very gracious in listening, that our country uses Japan, of all countries. They use you as an excuse for us to go full scale out, building new nuclear weapons and charging this race full speed. So we need Japan, and we need him, we need your prime minister to say, America, we love you, you're great allies, we want to work together, but let's sign the TPNW. And I'll just leave with one quote that I gave him. Yes, in 1983, the same year that I interviewed up there, I went and interviewed a Zenon Rosides, ambassador of Cyprus, who was working on disarmament forever. And he met with John F. Kennedy. He was convinced that John F. Kennedy wanted to get rid of all our nuclear weapons. His amazing test ban treaty that he passed that year was only to be the first step. But his quote I want to give you was, these negotiations, he was talking about the negotiations in '83, but these negotiations are a stagnant pretense deceiving the people that something is being done about the nuclear arms race, which is a galloping reality. That's his quote. So, God bless you. Thank you very much. I can go on, but lots of love. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. So, Consulate has a meeting at the United Nations, so he has to leave, but we'd like to give to him. So, thank you, Sakuma-san, for coming all the way to New York City. It's a wonderful meeting here. And I hope you will feel great and, we're not getting COVID while you are in New York City. So, thank you so much again for visiting, coming here all the way. Thank you. Thank you very much.
hold the hand, pray for 1 minute for world peace. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Peace on earth. Yes. 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 Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello. Just give me the warm power of the sun, give me the steady flow of waterfall. Give me the spirit of living things as they return to clay. Just give me the restless power of the wind. Give me the comforting glow of the wood fire. Please take all your atomic powers and power. Please take all your atomic powers and power. Please take all your atomic powers and power away. Everybody needs some power, I'm told, to shield them from the darkness and the cold. Some may sing your way to take control when it's bought and sold. Just give me the restless power of the wind. Give me the comforting glow of the wood fire. Please take all your atomic powers and power. Please take all your atomic powers and power. Please take all your atomic powers and power away. I know that life is at stake, yours and mine, and our descendants in time. So much to gain, so much to lose. I'd say every one of us has to choose. Just give me the power of the sun. Give me the steady flow of the waterfall. Please take all your atomic powers and power. Please take all your atomic powers and power. Please take all your atomic powers.
study war no more. Ain't gonna 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 study war no more. Woo!
Thank you so much for your participation. Here, we confirm that we will never give up on abolishing nuclear weapons and nuclear energy.
Right, right,
Let's
right.
speak loud together.
Together.
No more Hiroshimas.
No more Hiroshimas.
No more Nagasaki.
No more Nagasaki's.
No more war.
No more war.
No more Hibakusha.
No more Hibakusha.
No more Fukushima.
No more Fukushima.
Never again.
Never again.
Thank you and enjoy your rest of the day.
Thank you.
We need this nuclear arms ban. 66 nations signed on. Hooray! While you take a hostile stand. Those hideous weapons that threaten your life. Don't be run on land as so fair. Even treaty was passed about all those nukes. They bring big bucks so you don't care. You're over 5,000 nuclear warheads could destroy everyone countless times. Why not join the movement to end this threat? We're too sick to keep making progress. Where, oh, where is the USA? We need this nuclear arms ban. 66 nations signed on. Hooray! While you take a hostile stand. This land. Page 2. This one. Everybody knows that.
Thanks to
Alice. Alice. Same thing. Signs and singing and peaceful presence that nukes might transform to a peace center. This land must be nuke weapons free. They were in danger, that did not stop